Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Gavin and I am here to do my recommendation video for the Ravenclaws doing the N.E.W.T.s. Now, if you don't know what the N.E.W.T.s are, let me explain. So, Jay over at Book Roast does this magical readathon throughout April and August. So in April, we did the Owls, which are the ordinary wizarding levels. So for the Owls, you got to choose a career and the subjects that you had to study for those Owls. And each of those subjects had different prompts. So your boy here, being a full-on Ravenclaw, managed to complete all of my required Owls as well as every single subject that I didn't even need to study for. So I was like super excited and super happy about that. I got my 12 owls. You kind of do need your owls to further progress into the N.E.W.T.s to do your chosen career. So you do kind of need to do your owls, but if you miss them in April, you can always retake them in July, just before the N.E.W.T.s. But even then, you don't absolutely have to do your owls. This is a really fun magical readathon. You can just join in whenever. It's really fun. So in the N.E.W.T.s, you actually have to read multiple books per subject to really show off your magical abilities. Why am I doing this without my wand? That's better. I feel much better now. Swish and flick, you know. As I was saying, sorry, you need to read multiple books to really show off your magical skills in the N.E.W.T.s. So one subject will have 3 different prompts. So not every single career requires you to read multiple books. One career might just want an acceptable in charms, for example, so you would only have to read the one book. After that, I am trying to explain this in a really good way. But if you need exceeds expectations for charms, then you will need to read 2 books. And if you need an outstanding in that subject, then you will need to read 3 books. So not every subject requires all 3, but, you know, if you want to step up your A game and be a full-on Ravenclaw, then just do what must be done. Get us those house points. You have to complete the prompts in order. If you need an exceeds expectations, you have to do the acceptable first, and then the exceeds expectations. If you need outstanding, you have to do the acceptable and the exceeds expectations before you can do your outstanding prompt. This excites me. This excites me. So I'm going to go through this little recommendations video for 3 of the subjects that Jay from Book Roast has asked me to do. So I will be going through the Astronomy, the Charms, and the Divination prompts. But, you know, even if you're not doing those subjects, still stick around because you never know, you might get a really good recommendation. I don't want to do the same kind of recommendations, you know, and go for like the most obvious and most popular ones. So I'm trying to make this recommendations video for some more obscure novels that you may not have heard of, but at the same time there are quite a lot on there that you have heard of, so I'm talking out my arse. But, you know, I've tried not to be too obvious with them, is what I'm trying to say.
Turn to page 394.
I also have Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem. The Grey Lady's going to be pissed. Yes, so getting on to the prompts. The first subject I'm going to do is Astronomy. And to get an acceptable in Astronomy, you have to read a book that has a moon on the cover or has moon in the title. So for that one, I'm going to recommend How High the Moon by Karen Parsons. How High the Moon is a middle grade book. So it's set in 1944 and it follows 12-year-old Ella who lives with her grandparents in South Carolina. One Christmas, she gets invited to Boston by her mother. Her mother has been away pursuing a career in jazz music, so Ella is ecstatic to get an invitation to spend Christmas with her. So when she goes to Boston, she realizes that there is a lot more to her family than meets the eye. But after a life-changing month, she returns to the South and she's shocked by the news that one of her schoolmates, George, has been arrested for the murder of 2 white girls. So the book is kind of a little bit like The Hate You Give but for kids in a way. So it's a very like bittersweet and eye-opening book for the middle grade audience. So if you fancy something a little bit different, then I would definitely recommend How High the Moon. In order to get exceeds expectations in Astronomy, then you... Now who the fuck did that? No idea what happened there.
He defiled it!
Get off it, bitch. It's mine. Yeah. Yeah, come back at me, bitch. Alohomora. Yeah, you won't be able to sit down for a week. Sorry about that, moving on. Once you have secured your acceptable in Astronomy, you can then move on to the exceeds expectations. And for that one, you need to read a book that has the word night in the title or has night in the series name. So I would recommend Tom's Midnight Garden. If you haven't read this one, I really suggest that you do. It's such a great children's story. So Tom goes to stay with his aunt and uncle, and on a night time he can hear the clock downstairs. It strikes 13, and when it strikes 13, the back door opens up to this magical garden that nobody else knows about. And this is like such a magical treasure of a book. It's like a nice, quick and easy read. I would also recommend Good Night, Mr. Tom by Michelle Magorian. This is another absolute classic children's book. So it's set during the Second World War, during the evacuation of London, and our hero Willie, he gets sent to the countryside where he lives with an old man called Tom, and it's like this beautiful relationship between this old man and this young boy. You will probably cry during it. You will absolutely freaking love it. So if you haven't read Good Night, Mr. Tom or Tom's Midnight Garden, then I would definitely recommend using this prompt to discover old children classics. Like, you just have to read these books. So for outstanding, you have to read a sci-fi book, but Jay in the announcement video said that if you don't usually really read sci-fi, then you can pick a book that has stars on the cover. Now, I've only ever read 2 sci-fi books in my life, so I'm actually going to go for the stars on the cover prompt, and I would recommend Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. And this is like so perfect for the N.E.W.T.s. This is like so Harry Potter. Like, instead of the protagonist being a guy, it was more like as if Hagrid said, "You're a woman, Harry." Because you really do feel the inspiration from Harry Potter, especially in the opening of this. This is kind of a bit like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire-ish. So Morrigan Crow, she is a cursed child, and she gets whisked away to this land of Nevermore, where she begins to learn the customs of the Wondrous Society, and she goes through 4 trials in order to earn her place in this magical world. So it is a little bit Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire-esque with a Triwizard Tournament. So if you're looking for a really great children's book, which I know I've just recommended like 4 off the bat, sorry about that. I promise I will get to some more like adulty books in a sec, but I would definitely recommend Nevermore if you want to continue the sort of magical Harry Potter-esque reads. So moving on to charms.
One of the wizard's most rudimentary skills is levitation, or the ability to make objects fly.
In order to get an acceptable, you have to read a book that has a gorgeous cover. Obviously, that's very subjective, but I would recommend looking on your bookshelf and try to pick a book that's a classic, because there are some absolutely gorgeous covers for these classics. If you have maybe a cloth-bound edition, maybe if you have a Barnes & Noble, like I do for The Phantom of the Opera, maybe try and go back in time a little bit, you know, and just use that old time turner and travel back to the past. Read a book that has been out for maybe 100 years and bridge the gap between past and present with an absolutely gorgeous book. So I would recommend something like maybe The Phantom of the Opera, maybe a Jane Austen. There are loads of beautiful editions of Jane Austen, Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz. You know, there's just like so many to choose from. So I would recommend definitely going through your shelf, seeing what kind of classics you have and the beautiful editions that are there. However, I would also recommend The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I'm sure you've maybe watched the film, you've maybe seen the musical, you'll know what The Phantom of the Opera is about. This is about Christine, an opera singer who seems to be haunted by a mysterious phantom who lives at the opera. Pretty much all in the title for you. This is definitely another classic book that you should absolutely read. You know, I've had this wand and I haven't actually used Accio yet. Like, what the hell? And I'm supposed to be a Ravenclaw? In order to achieve and exceed expectations in charms, you have to read a manga, a comic book, or a graphic novel. Or if you don't read any of those things, you can pick a book that's under 150 pages long. And I'm going to recommend to you Accio Heartstopper. Yeah, man. Heartstopper, Volume 1 by Alice Osman. Obviously, that was magic. Heartstopper follows 2 boys in love. Like, what more do you need to know? You know, it's Pride at the minute. You need to celebrate love, especially during the N.E.W.T.s. So this one is about a jock and a pretty awkward boy at school, and yeah, they fall in love. They also have all of the pressures of high school during this as well, so it's very, it touches your heart. It touches you in places you didn't realize you could be touched. And if you've already read Heartstopper Volume 1, then definitely read Volume 2, which has just been released. I cannot wait to read this one. I haven't read it yet. So maybe this is the one that I choose for this prompt. But I would definitely recommend these 2 for the exceeds expectations for charms. I'm not going to use Accio again because it was far too much effort. In order to achieve an outstanding in charms, you have to use the Spongify charm, which is the softening charm. Of course, all of you Ravenclaws know this. And that is to read a paperback book. Now, the irony here is that I do not have this paperback book. I can only put it up here. And that will be Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. I have not read this myself. Now, the reason I am recommending Spellslinger, and it's totally top secret. You absolutely cannot tell any of the teachers, and that is because we are sneaking into the forbidden section of the library during N.E.W.T.s in order to read this book as a group. So why don't we read this group book together? There'll be a live stream at the end of August for it, and I know I want to get involved, so what you say? Yeah, sounds pretty good. Yeah. Now, I'd never read Spellslinger before, but all I know about it is that it's set in a world of mages, and, I mean, come on, it's a magical readathon. It makes sense. Okay, so moving on to Divination now.
In this room, you shall explore the noble art of divination. In this room, you shall discover if you possess the sight.
In order to achieve an acceptable, you have to read a book that has a white cover. And for that one, I'm going to recommend a book that a lot of people do already know. I'm sorry I said I would try and be different, but this is the only book that I really knew that I'd read and could wholeheartedly recommend, and that is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I cannot tell you how much I absolutely loved this book. This was my favourite read of 2018. It is about Eleanor Oliphant. She's just an ordinary girl, you know, she works in an office, she has a very clean kind of job, she goes to and from home, she has a very set schedule. Life just kind of gets in the way of her schedules, and she starts to open up a bit more. You know, Eleanor strikes up this friendship with Raymond, who is like an IT tech guy at work, and it's just like such a bizarre friendship, but at the same time, you just like, it's so endearing. So Eleanor kind of learns to open up, and it's just I cannot recommend this enough. This is definitely a book that I think everybody should be reading. While I would say that this book doesn't have that much of a plot, it's so character driven and the characters are so multi-layered, you just can't help but fall in love with the strange and quirky Eleanor Oliphant. It's just impossible to resist. So for this prompt, I would definitely recommend Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. Now, in order to achieve next season's expectations in Divination, you have to read a short story or a short story collection. You can also read just one short story in a collection and it will count. So I would recommend reading any short story by Edgar Allan Poe. So my favourites are The Black Cat and The Telltale Heart, which I think are two of his most well-known short stories. So if you love things that are gothic and macabre, Edgar Allan Poe I would definitely recommend reading, especially if you've never read Poe before. He's just one of those must-read authors, especially in terms of short stories. He has such good pacing, such a good imagination, and he carries that through, and you really get a feel of the life of the characters, and I would definitely say that Edgar Allan Poe is probably one of my favourite short story writers of all time. Again, this is another opportunity to dive straight back into the past and relive some really classic works. But I would definitely recommend The Black Cat or The Telltale Heart. Now, if you're looking for short stories that are maybe just a bit more magical, then I would recommend reading The Warren Witches. Now, these short stories are based on the cult classic show Charmed. If you're a huge fan of this show like I am, I think you would absolutely love this book. It has 8 incredible short stories in this. It has the, you know, the bond between the 3 sisters, Piper, Phoebe, and Paige, who happen to be witches. In each of the short stories, it focuses on their sisterhood, their magic, their fight against evil. So I would recommend this if you are looking for something a bit more modern than Poe. And in order to achieve an outstanding in Divination, then you have to read the last book that you bought or the last book that you borrowed from the library. Now, obviously this is going to be totally different for every single person, but the last book that I bought was Off Season by Jack Ketchum. This is a very twisted horror novel. It follows a young editor who goes to a cabin in Maine. Her boyfriend and some friends decide to join her. Not long after that, they are tormented by a group of cannibals. This book was banned in America for 20 years, so if you're looking for something that would really want to shock you, one of my friends at work recommended me this. But yeah, this book is going to be totally different for every single person. If you borrowed something from the library, read that. Read the last book that you bought, especially if it's one that you're really excited to read. And I know I'm excited to read this one. I don't know if it's going to be the last book I buy before I set up my TBR, but let's see, shall we? Not very Harry Potter-esque though. I'm still waving my wand around. So those were my recommendations for those prompts, but of course you can do whatever you want with those, and hopefully I've managed to convince you to add some more books to your TBR. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little recommendations video. So Wingardium Leviosa your fingers and click that like button. Leave a little comment to let me know if any of those books interest you. Let me know if you're taking part in the N.E.W.T.s. Let me know what your house is. You know, I won't hate on anybody who's not in the Ravenclaw house. I'm not that kind of person. And let's just chat N.E.W.T.s. Like, I am so excited. Remember that the N.E.W.T.s do start on August 1st until August 31st. It is 31st. 30 days, September, April, June, and November. All the rest of 31. Yeah, 31 days. Please join me to take part in the very exciting N.E.W.T.s. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more content. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye!